transformation of nursing amidst the pandemic, experiences and reflections from the first and second waves. We will go through some self-introductions, and then there will be 3 people that will be presenting it. I'll be presenting the initial framework, and then Sonali will be talking about a lot of the details about nursing, and then Anupama Sanjeev will come and wrap it up after that. But first, I think we'll just introduce ourselves. I am Ram Prasad. Many of you may be familiar with me. I am the director of the Ramaiah Public Policy Center, and I'm also Professor Emeritus from the University of Illinois in Chicago. Sonali, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sonali. I head the nursing college in Ramaiah institutions. Thank you.
Anupama, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Anupama Sanjeev. I'm a research fellow at Ramaiah Public Policy Center.
I am Kuldeep Raina. I happen to be the Vice Chancellor of the ROAS. And very thanks, Sonali, for connecting me in this wonderful portal in the virtual mode. I have been here for about 6 weeks now, and I'm sure that these learnings are going to enrich me. And in turn, we can see that, what best we can do. My heartfelt gratitude to the whole nursing fraternity who have been leaving no stone unturned in making the human beings happy, smile. And I pray to God that you all remain safe. God help the society at large. And your contributions are immense. I salute you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and welcome to the presentation, sir.
Thank you.
What we'll do is I'll sort of share the screen and go to the slides, if I may, and then we'll start with the presentation. Can you see the slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
It is okay. Yes, it is fine.
Okay, so the title, as I mentioned, is The Transformation of Nursing Amidst the Pandemic, Experiences and Reflections from the First and Second Wave. Yes? We introduce ourselves. Now, nursing is potentially the weakest link in the healthcare chain in India, and yet a large part of managing the pandemic was shouldered by nurses. Further, the impending transformation has found an unexpected catalyst. That is, the impending transformation in nursing has found an unexpected catalyst in COVID-19. As Sonali, Anupama, and myself have been working on nursing, the relationship between nursing education and practice, and also the recent Nursing Act. And we have had a couple of webinars on this. We have had a couple of papers and white papers on it. So what we will be doing is to draw upon the work that we have done, the framework that we have used, to talk about what is happening in the context, what has happened in the context of COVID-19, and what we could look forward to in the future. So we present a novel systemic framework that has been validated through stakeholder consultation and publication to transform nursing from a vocation to a profession. In India, in the context of this framework, we discuss the challenges to nursing in first and second waves of the pandemic, and will make recommendations for the long term and the potential third wave of the pandemic. Okay. So I hope I'm clear. I hope you can hear me. So those of you that have been to these webinars have seen us, probably have seen frameworks like this. We call it an ontology. And this is what we call the framework for nursing practice in India. And we are going to frame the discussion within this. I will be talking through the framework so that you have an understanding of its logic and how it is going to be applied. In the end, when Anupama comes in, she is going to fit the discussion into this framework to highlight what are some of the areas that are important, what are some of the areas that are of medium importance and low importance. students. All of us in this context, particularly in other contexts too, in terms of nursing practice, are concerned about the availability of the nurses. And in addition to the availability in numbers in appropriate places, one is also concerned about the quality, their distribution geographically in terms of the different parts of the country, rural and urban areas, as well as the distribution by specialty. And related to all this is also the issue of the mobility of the nurses. Mobility of the nurses within the state, across states, and across countries, because that has become a very big issue in terms of India being able to hold back the nurses. And the safety. And the safety of the nurses or nursing practice has become a particularly critical issue in the context of COVID-19. So in terms of nursing practice, we are concerned about the outcomes of availability, quality, distribution, geographical and specialty distribution, mobility and safety. And the nursing practice can be in an institution, which may be a private or a public institution, or it could be in the community, or it could also be independent practice, which is not very prevalent in the country. So what this part of the framework captures is the outcome that we are looking at. We are looking at, for example, institution private nursing practice availability, or community nursing practice mobility, or community nursing practice safety. So the combinations of the elements in these two dimensions highlight the complex combinations of outcomes one is looking for. Coming to the left side, we talk about nursing education and employment. Broadly from the WHO categories, we have put 4 categories: the nursing assistant, licensed practical nurse, registered nurse, and advanced practical nurse. In India, we don't have the licensed practical nurse as much. So the nursing assistant, registered nurse, and advanced practice are the appropriate ones. So when we think of nurses, we need to think of the education as well as the employment. In terms of the education, the stages are induction, their education to different levels: certificate, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral. And an important issue is retraining them and replacing them. So these form the stages of education of the nurse. Similarly, in terms of employment, we have recruitment, confirmation, remuneration, growth, promotion, leadership, and protection. So these are the stages of employment. What we really need to do is to look at the complex combinations that cut across the framework and address them in terms of effective nursing practice in India. So we could think of certificate education and recruitment of nursing assistant for institution private nursing practice quality, or we can think of retraining and remuneration of advanced practice nurse for institution public nursing practice safety. So these are all the combinations through which we can think in terms of nursing practice in India. It gives us a lens to look at the big picture. That's why we call it making the elephant visible. We play on the story of the blind man and the elephant, where each person is looking at a different part of the elephant and claiming that to be elephant. So when we put it all together, the elephant becomes visible and we can address the problem systemically and systematically. So within this framework, I will pass it on to Sonali to talk about the nursing workforce in India prior to COVID-19 and subsequent. Sonali, sorry.
Thank you, sir. So I will take you through briefly how nursing was in India prior to the pandemic, starting of the pandemic. India already had shortage of 2.4 million nurses before we started with pandemic. For the knowledge of non-nursing audience, there's a global shortage of nurses. The world needs 6 million nurses more to have adequate nursing workforce, of which 2.4 million shortage exists only in India. It is also interesting to know that 75% of the healthcare workforce in India comprises of nurses. And although this workforce is so huge, and repeatedly the national special task forces to study nursing and give recommendation to Government of India were set up, they have very repeatedly given recommendations to set up Directorate of Nursing Education and Services at state levels to better the management of nursing services in states, because the health as well as education is a subject of states. However, it has been 3 decades after these recommendations, and even the 2017 National Health Policy recommends for this. Still, there is no establishment of Directorate of Nursing Services in any states except one state, that's West Bengal. It should be also noted that even before the pandemic, almost the rates may be variable according to states, but an average of 30% of posts of staff nurses were lying vacant in most state government hospitals. It's also important to know that when it comes to public sector as well as private sector, the preference is always given to employ either nurses with A&M qualification or GNM qualifications. For a very simple reason that they come at a cheaper cost. We do have nurses qualified with BSc nursing qualifications, postgraduate nurses, that is MSc nursing, and from a decade now we have a PhD program. However, there are no openings in government as well as private sector. There are no positions created for these nurses, and mostly these migrate abroad or work in nursing education institutions in India. We have had, previous to pandemic, a poor continuing education of nurses. Once a nurse completes her diploma or graduation, she gets into a job. And interestingly, previously there was a lifelong licensure given to her. Recently, it has been changed that every 5 years a nurse is required to renew her licensure. However, the licensure process is not linked to the skill upgradation or knowledge upgradation of these nurses because of poor continuing nursing education program. The nurse-patient ratios were stipulated in India by the SIU norms, which came in force in early 90s. And interestingly, after that, there was no revision of nurse-patient ratios in this country. However, most hospitals, even before pandemic, failed to adhere to the nurse-patient ratio norms, and it became worst in COVID. Nurses had poor job satisfaction because of poor pay, poor working conditions, poor regulation of nursing services. By poor regulation of nursing services, I mean that there is no legal regulation of nursing service in India which stipulates what is the scope of the work for what qualification nurse, what titles can be used by who, what is the process for continuation of licensure for these nurses, and what are the pay regulations for different cadres of nurses that exist in this country. So because of these all reason, it is obvious that most Indian nurses, after gaining a year or 2 years experience, always prefer to migrate to other countries, especially the European countries and Middle East countries for work. So India is the second largest supplier of nurses to European countries after Philippines. And this was there before pandemic itself. What happened, sir, can I have the next slide?
Yeah.
What happened during the pandemic? That again, the 80% of the frontline workforce comprised of nurses alone in the pandemic, may it be the private sector or government sector. There were a lot of issues that were faced by nurses, especially during the first wave. These issues were more prominent. When the pandemic commenced, hurriedly, nurses working in different units had to be deployed in COVID wards or COVID ICUs, who did not have orientation of a physical setup of that ward, who did not have orientation about because they were probably previously working in OBG ward, they had never worked with adult patients. But irrespective of all that, a quick training of maybe a short duration of 2 to 3 days was organized, and these nurses were placed for COVID work because the cases were surging and the hospitals were filling up with the patients. So this resulted in inadequate orientation and training for nurses who were placed for COVID care. In public as well as private sector, there were few who offered meager incentives for nurses who got ready to work with in COVID areas. There were also hospitals in state government as well as private sector who did not offer any additional incentives for nurses to work in these areas, although it posed higher risk to their health. In the first wave, especially, we had issues with PPEs. All of you remember that we did not have enough factories which manufactured PPEs, so there was acute shortage. Of course, now we've become very self-reliable in terms of PPEs, but initially there were non-standard PPEs. A lot of nurses working in different places did not get adequate PPEs, which posed them to the risk of infection. We had inadequate equipments and supplies for nursing care. The patient loads in hospitals increased tremendously. The supplies and equipments which most hospital managements looked at as very small things. It may be wheelchairs, it may be thermometers, it may be stretchers to transport patients. All of these were in great shortage. I remember some of my staff telling that to shift a patient from one ward to another, it took them 1 hour's time to find a stretcher. And this was happening when a nurse was working in a PP kit in a month of May, when she was sweating, when the glasses would get fogged, when the hearing capacity was reduced, and they had to go through all this struggle. What were the nurse-patient ratios all over India that we maintained in during the first and second wave of COVID? The second wave, actually, we all know that the cases have risen tremendously, and it has put a lot of work pressure on nurses. Even during the first wave, for a month or two, in wards, we had maintained, I'm talking generally in India, most COVID care hospitals maintain a ratio in the wards as 1:40, whereas the stipulated ratio for nurses in the wards is 1:8. The ICUs was even more disastrous. The stipulated nurse-patient ratios is 1:2 maximum. Ideal is 1:1. In COVID times, we have had 1:10 nurse-patient ratios in most hospitals. High risk of acquiring infection, I just spoke about this risk, although they were predisposed. I think nurses were the only resilient professionals who agreed in spite of this risk, and they continue to work in COVID areas. The second wave has almost caused an exhaustion, physical exhaustion and mental exhaustion for them. Long working hours, the stipulated duty shifts of nurses usually used to be 8 hours, which were cut down to 6 hours. However, working in 6 hours continuously with PP still is very difficult. In other countries where my friends work, European countries, they also worked in COVID, but they would get a break after every 2 to 3 hours because they were not so short-staffed, and they had enough people to replace them periodically. We also had lack of support system for nurses. Because of the COVID, the crash or baby care centers closed down. We must understand, even today in India, the 80% of nursing workforce is women, and they are in their reproductive age group. between 20 to 40. So they had their children to be taken care of. They had to do their household chores and come for duties, which were very hectic. They underwent a lot of mental health issues. Initially, there was high levels of anxiety. Some of them got depressed. Some of them had other mental health issues. However, in comparison to other countries, like one of my friend who works in UK, she said for a group of 4 to 5 nurses, they had one buddy who would come and just talk to them every day and ask them how are they feeling and do they have any concerns to share with. The hospitals provided not only food for the people who were on duty, but they also offered to give packaged food for their family members. So I think somewhere this kind of support system did lack in our case. Lack of data on infections and deaths in nurses. This is also very striking. I would advise all of you to do a Google search that how many medical professionals died during COVID, and you would get data only about doctors' numbers. I appreciate efforts of IMA, who has kept a very detailed data about how many doctors lost their lives. However, we don't find the data, although there are plenty of nurses who lost their lives due to COVID in last wave as well as this wave. The government had promised insurance for people who die during doing COVID duty. There is no data till date available as to how many such people really received such insurance money. So these were the issues that nurses faced during doing the COVID work. Let's have a look at how did patient care suffer because of these things. Okay, before that, we will have a look at what, okay, sir. The most state governments, although they knew that the nursing shortage is acute, they already had 30% or even more vacancies of nurses in their states, did not start with the recruitment of nurses until the beginning of the second wave of COVID. Also, when the nurses were recruited, especially in the government hospitals, it was a makeshift arrangement. They were clearly looking for nurses only for 1 or 2 months. In fact, nurses were offered contractual jobs ranging between 1 month to 3 months by government hospitals. There was I especially wanted to mention this, that one government hospital in Manipur had advertised during the first wave recruitment of nurses on daily wages for 285 rupees per day. So this was, extreme. Although the country was in dire need of nurses, the people of this country did not understand that they need to take care and pay well to the nurses who are risking their lives. So this was a big contradiction that happened in India. Neither central nor the state government COVID task forces have nurse experts on their panel, although the 80% of the COVID care is taken by nurses. News and print media have hardly covered what about nursing shortage issues and what are the nurses issues during the COVID times. The basic focus in the media is always about doctors. Yes, doctors also have worked hard. However, the major workforce was nurses, and especially about manpower shortage, I would like to say this prominently, that during the first wave in month of March, April 2020, there was only talks about beds. How do we create more beds? There was no talk about the manpower, the number of doctors, nurses that are required. And I always wondered that how would the beds would not care for patients. It is the doctors and nurses who care for patients. So without manpower, it was only beds was our priority. So slowly the realizations came very slow. So during the second wave, manpower shortage became a talk for us. The large number of nurses, even during the COVID, are seeking employment overseas because there is a global shortage of nurses and there is very high demand, and nurses are offered very lucrative pay as well as working conditions, and there are additional perks for them. So many nurses, there have been a lot of reports in news media that many nurses have been leaving country even during COVID because they get better jobs now in other countries. Can we have the next slide, sir? So how did this all affect the patient care, which is the most important point, I feel, that we all know that nurses have a direct influence on the quality of care that's provided in the hospital. They are crucial for patient care. Doctors prescribe the treatment. It is nurses who implement all those treatment procedures that have been advised, and they are round the clock with the patient. So this was, because of nursing shortage, this was affected a lot. There were a lot of makeshift COVID care centers and hospitals that came up during the first as well as second wave. However, they could not function properly because of nursing shortage issues. There's a rampant poor quality of care across India because of very poor nurse-patient ratios that we talked about. Nurses are responsible not just for the direct patient care, but also for the other ward management works. The nurses who were into supervisory level also were doing the actual ground level work. So there was no close supervision of the care that was given to patients. So there was inadequate supervision, which led to even poorer quality of nursing care. I think one more factor that was responsible, apart from nurse-patient ratios, was working in PPE kits. It caused physical distress, continues to cause for nurses, which affects their ability to think and execute their work. So we actually need more number of nurses during such times, which we don't have. We also know that there are very high mortality rates among patients, especially admitted to ICUs. In today's Times of India says that 56% of patients who are admitted to ICUs have secondary infections, and almost 60% of them are dying of these infections. All over India, most ICUs, especially in second wave, have reported the mortality rates for ICU patients as high as 60%. What could be the reasons of such high mortality rates among the patients? I would say the one major reason is poor quality of nursing care, poor aseptic techniques that have been used. The nurses are not adequately trained. The nursing manpower is there's a gross shortage, acute shortage of nurses to do the regular patient care work. And that's leading to secondary infections. That's leading to mucormycosis. We all know that the mucormycosis is because of patients being given high steroid dosage. But there's a big talk now going on whether the humidifier water has been put as sterile water, whether the humidifier's water has been changed, the humidifiers are sterilized. If this is not done, the patients will obviously develop mucormycosis. If the oxygen pipes are shared between patients, they will lead to such infections. So I think nurses play a lot of crucial role because these were the activities that nurses did regularly, and now there's a shortage leading to such problems, especially in bigger hospitals. Patient safety issues have taken really a backseat during COVID, unfortunately. Even during non-COVID times, medication errors, falls for patients were very high risk. I mean, tremendous patient safety issues. We used to pay attention to these two factors. However, with the shortage of manpower, I think we don't even have records of how many patients could have been given wrong medications, wrong dosage of medications, wrong treatment administration. So a lot of safety issues probably not taken care of during COVID. Risk for hospital-acquired infection, we already talked about it. We all know during the second wave, we've started with vaccinations from January 16 this year. There are long queues at vaccination centers. In our hospital also, we have tremendous, long queues for vaccination. When we talk to those old people looking for vaccination, they say, I come here at 5 a.m. for registering myself, because even after coming at 5 a.m., the waiting time is like around 3 to 4 hours for getting themselves vaccinated. The vaccination job is done by nurses. Again, the manpower shortage is affecting the vaccination. There was a report from UP wherein an ANM administered a second dose of Covaxin to a patient who had received first dose of Covishield. I would attribute this to lack of training of nurses. The solutions, what government sees is suspension of an ANM, but those are not real solutions to these problems. The nursing manpower shortage has badly affected the implementation of regular national health programs, including the reproductive, maternal, neonatal, and child health programs. Lot of children, the immunization is not up to date today for the normal children because they hesitate to come to hospital, or because of COVID, the immunization activity, the PHCs and the government centers are not able to carry out. The National Tuberculosis Program, which was one of the major programs in the country, the TB surveillance has taken a backseat because of COVID. The regular government programs, most of them are implemented through nurses and ASHA workers, which have been grossly affected due to manpower shortage. Of course, there is inadequate patient counseling, teaching in the hospitals as well as community areas, which is much required in these times. So these are the ways how the patient care in hospital as well as community has been affected through COVID. So can you have next slide, please? So how do we prepare nurses for third wave? We are anticipating that the third wave of COVID will come shortly by October this year. Although nurses are exhausted, they will have to go through another training to get themselves prepared. And I think most managements, I feel that should pay attention to following aspects to get them prepared. That we must have, we must ensure that the nurse-patient ratios are good during at least third wave when we look at the pediatric patients, because unlike adults, the pediatric patients can't communicate what's happening to them. They need a very close monitoring and observation. So we cannot do with very grossly poor nurse-patient ratios in this wave. If it affects, I mean, unfortunately, if the wave comes, it will not work. Very few nurses have experience of working in pediatric setups. So they all need to be trained, because pediatric medication doses, pediatric different kinds of tubes, cannulas that are work for pediatric patients, sizes are different. The monitoring of pediatric patients who are on non-invasive and invasive ventilator, there's a vast differences what nurses need to assess and report to doctors. So there's a lot of training that's required for nurses, I would say. There's also training required on infection control protocols, because otherwise also pediatric patients have very low immunity and they are at a very high risk for infection. So it becomes even more crucial to pay attention to training of nurses on infection control protocols. We need to get ready with the standard operating procedures that would be required for nurses to go through and get trained on while they render their care to COVID patients. We need to plan and procure enough amount of equipments and supplies that would be needed for pediatric care, nursing care in the hospitals. So can we have the next slide, sir, please? What happened to nursing education during the COVID? I mean, pre-COVID area, we all know that the nursing institutions have poor infrastructure, poor staffing. There's a lack of continuing education for the nursing staff who works in education sector. There's a clinical training facility is poor in most nursing education institutions, do not have their own parent hospital. There's a poor regulation of education institutions in India. Apart from this, there's very unplanned, unmonitored, and uneven growth of nursing education institutions in our country. There are no nursing manpower demand studies, sound studies in our country, which say that which qualification, how many nurses do we exactly require for our country. Secondly, there's more than 50% of the nursing education institutions are existing in only 5 southern states of India. This acute shortage of nursing education institutions in North India. The current curriculum of nursing is more theoretical and it needs to be competency based more. The nursing qualification certification various that are currently offered are not really valued for job roles when these nurses graduate or pass out from nursing education institution, especially the postgraduates, the PhD degree holders do not have any job positions that are created. Lack of admissions to higher education programs, we have been having this problem for past 1 decade in country. So next slide please. So during pandemic, what happened to nursing education? Like other education institutions, we have also started online education, but it's very difficult to train nurses in online mode because nursing is more practice oriented, skill oriented profession. So there are no guidelines, unfortunately, that are given by apex bodies to follow how we could train nurses online. Every institution is preparing their own plans, and I'm sure they are not uniform, and we do not know how far they ensure standards in these times. Nursing teachers and students have taken up roles in COVID care hospitals. The senior students, the many nurse educators have become jobless because colleges closed down for 4 months or so, and many small managements, especially in private sector, do not want to pay their staff. So they are either working on half pay or even no pay. The admission, one positive thing that has happened because people have recognized that the global demand for nursing would go very high during pandemic and even after pandemic. So lots of inquiries for admission to nursing courses and lots of inquiries I am getting for filling up the transcript forms where the passed out students now want to migrate overseas. Next slide, sir. The country as such, the government has recognized the value of nurses during this pandemic, and there are few good changes that have been proposed by the government. One of that is the NNMC bill, the National Nursing Midwifery Commission bill, which was proposed in 2020. The bill intends to bring a national nursing and midwifery commission, which would replace the existing Indian Nursing Council, which is the current apex body for nursing education. One problem with the INC Act, the Indian Nursing Council Act 1947, was that it did not cover any aspects of nursing practice. The NNMC bill is way more in detail and much better than the previous act. However, it still does not have adequate coverage of regulation of nursing practice. We at RPPC, we had a discussion on this and we have submitted our recommendations, which were invited by the Government of India regarding our points to how we can improve the bill draft. We are looking forward that the bill gets better and it comes out as an act. The central government had planned in 2018 that it would phase out the GNM, the Diploma Nursing Program, and keep single entry to nursing only for graduation programs. And the GNM program was proposed to be phased out by 2022. However, there was a U-turn made on this decision during COVID because the government realized that there's a huge demand for nursing workforce, and if we shut down, probably we stop the GNM program, we will not meet those manpower demands. So as of now, these plans are suspended. Dr. Ram Prasad and his team did a wonderful analysis of the Union Budget 2021 and identified how this budget has addressed health and related issues. From that, I learned that there's a focus on allocation of funds to upgrade knowledge and skills of nursing personnel in nursing education, administration, and service. Strengthening and upgradation of schools of nursing infrastructure to College of Nursing in the country. The government has also approved this year, just a month ago, a new program that's nurse practitioner in midwifery. A gazette notification is released. Of course, this is yet to begin at any educational institutions. So these are the positive things in terms of policy transition for nursing that have happened during the COVID. Now my friend and colleague Anupama will take you through. She will connect how these things that have happened pre-COVID and during COVID connect with our ontology framework. Over to you, Anupama.
Thank you, Sonali. That was a very nice, detailed discussion of the various issues that challenge nursing practice in India today. So if we synthesize what Sonali spoke about in the context of the framework that we present, in order of priority to be addressed, then the red arrows stand for high priority, the yellow arrows are medium priority, and the green arrows refer to low priority. If we take the issues that are on high priority, that need to be addressed, nursing education is the foundation of employment and future nursing practice. So the issues that need high priority in nursing education are, first of all, the certificate and the bachelor's courses. While we have certificate courses, the ANM and GNM, which are popular and which Sonali also referred to in her talk, the ANM and GNM are mostly focused towards working in rural areas, in the government institutions, which are primarily intended for rural areas. And the bachelor's courses themselves, the focus on competency development and the focus on practical training, the upgradation of the curricula with reference to this needs to be addressed. And the retraining of nursing staff, especially during COVID times, like Sonali referred to, the upcoming third wave is posited to affect a lot of children. So when there is a large number of children who have to be treated, the nurses have to adapt and understand how to go about it, because there are understandably differences in medical procedures and the medical the processes themselves. So while certificate courses and bachelor courses need to be upgraded in order to deliver effective nursing aspirants to the practice, retraining is essential, especially during today's COVID pandemic. Moving on to the employment dimension of the framework, the recruitment of nurses, even during pre-COVID times, much of the recruitment in many private institutions, which has been recorded anecdotally and in various parts of scattered literature, we find that the ancillary nursing staff who were recruited in the place of staff nurses, so that the remuneration would be kept low and they were trained on the job, hindering the effective nursing practice. So the recruitment and the remuneration of these nurses also did not clarify the further progression in the employment cycle. So when we look at remuneration, this directly reflects to the lack of role description for nurses. While there are several role nurses available and listed within the government, the exact role description in terms of what comes within that gamut of that role and how it would progress into the next role, which directly also reflect the growth and promotion, which I will be dealing with in the next level of priority. So the recruitment and remuneration are dependent on the role description of nurses, which is not yet been clarified in any of the in the INC or the upcoming bill 2020. The leadership positions for nurses, like Sonali mentioned, starting at the central government, there is no separate directorate of services looking at nursing. They have been clubbed with medical services, and hence the 80% of the healthcare workforce who are nurses need a forum where there issues can be addressed. So many of these leadership roles which are within these bodies lie vacant because the government is unable to find nursing administrators to fill these roles, which again reflects back on the recruitment process for nurses and the employment cycle in terms of the growth promotion, for which would lead to people being equipped for these leadership roles. The protection of nurses. Now, protection here would refer to three aspects. Protection in terms of legalities when at work, the protection in terms of what would happen in the case of a patient finding dissatisfactory service from a nurse. Protection also in today's COVID times refers to the insurance, the financial protection for nurses. Is there an insurance scheme in place which would protect them from the occupational hazards that result when dealing with infectious diseases? Protection also refers to safety of working conditions. For example, Sonali spoke about having inadequate PPE, or maybe the unhygienic working conditions in which they were forced to deliver. So all these would form aspects of protection. The role of the, next we move to the type dimension, the role of the nursing assistant. Nursing assistant is a broad definition which actually in India, they are not referred to as nursing assistants, but broadly they would refer to the ancillary nursing staff who are hired with very minimal training. They are trained more on the job, and their role is not described clearly. So while a nursing mix requires nursing assistants, staff nurses, and registered nurses, the role of the nursing assistant, because it is not clarified, leads to a lot of confusion during the hiring process. And the role of the registered nurse. The registered nurse, the recruitment and the remuneration must be clarified, as also the career progression, because this is currently missing in the acts and the bills. Then we move on to nursing practice. Nursing practice in both private and public institutions there are a lot of challenges like Sonali described and like we have prioritized, which need to be addressed for effective nursing practice in both private and public institutions. Finally, the outcomes. The availability and quality of nurses is dependent on the availability and quality of the courses that are that prepare these nurses, as also the recruitment procedures that direct nursing practice. Also, there is a geographical, we will address the geographical skew in the next priority. The safety of nurses again take priority, especially during a pandemic, where safety again refers to not just the legal protection, as also the financial protection measures that may be in place, and the personal protection in terms of the equipment and the devices that they can use to protect themselves against infection. Moving to the issues that have been listed as medium priority, but we would welcome a discussion on this. The induction of nurse aspirants into the nursing courses. The NEP, the National Education Policy, has recommended that a national entry exam, a single entry exam be administered in order to serve as a filtering process and to accept nurses of quality. It would also indicate a certain seriousness towards the seriousness in the approach to nursing education. The master's courses also, while many of the nursing educators have moved into educator roles after a master's course, it is as of now it is unclear in terms of what else a person holding a master's course can do. For example, for a nursing educator, it is not mandated to have clinical practice. Also, if a nursing educator is contributing to both clinical practice as well as education, the clinical practice is not acknowledged in terms of remuneration. Looking at the employment of nurses, the confirmation of nurses, like Sonali explained, nurses are being hired on they are not being confirmed. They are being hired on a contractual basis, in some cases on a daily wage basis. Now, nurses are
Anupama?
required as, yes, sir.
Anupama, we may want to hurry up a little bit. We are at 150 already.
Okay, sir. So the confirmation of nurses would be a point of affirmation to the nurses that they are being recognized and acknowledged. The growth and promotion of nurses also is dependent on the role description, which, like I explained before, is not available as yet. Moving on to the community. In the community, the registered nurses could be encouraged, could be allowed to practice within the community, especially in the case of the COVID pandemic, where 90% of the patients are in home isolation. The geographical skew which exists because 50% of the institutes are in the south of India, and many of the students who come to study here stay back in the south of India. That also needs to be addressed. The mobility, like Ram sir referred to earlier, not just within the state, but between states and outside of the country, must be addressed by looking at the education and the employment procedures available to nurses. Moving to the low priority, what we listed as,
Sorry.
yeah, the doctoral courses, there are very few people opting for doctoral courses. So the career progression trajectory must be defined so that people are clear as to what can be done with a doctoral course. And the advanced practiced RN courses should be encouraged to independently practice, especially in the rural areas where such services are required greatly. So this is a framework which synthesizes what Sonali spoke about in terms of the issues that challenge nursing practice. Moving from this to the recommendations to catalyze the transformation of nursing. So broadly, updating nursing curricula with a focus on practical training and competency building. And most importantly, availability planning for recruitment must be dictated by the education. So while there is no existing database of manpower that is available, we also do not have any input from the industry, from the educational institutions in terms of the requirement. So the link between nursing education and practice must be established in these terms. Also, the role specification of clear descriptions, the role description, including nurses in the nursing administrating hierarchy. Also, the work hierarchy within which they currently operate is rigid, that needs to be addressed so that there is autonomy, and retraining programs specifying non-compliance measures for institutions that indulge in irregularities. Ultimately, it calls for a greater emphasis on regulation of nursing services in India. Hence, both the central and state acts that govern nursing and education practice, along with the institutions themselves, must enable competency development of employed nurses. So in addition to the acts, the institutions also must enable competency development by allowing time for it, formulating guidelines for nursing practice, as well as offering legal and administrative regulations for nursing services, which offering input on this for at the state level as while being directed from the center. So next slide, sir. These are the references that we have used in the preparation of this, as well as other publications that we have had. So we come to the end of our presentation now. Ram sir, there are several questions on the chat. Do we address them first?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing and you can start addressing the questions. And I think between Sonali and you can start addressing the questions. Yes, please. And also other people can raise questions too.
Yes. Deepti Damodaran has a question. I will just rephrase the question, Deepti. She wants to understand how we are looking at the evaluation pattern for students when classes are going on in the online mode and the practical training has been affected. So how do we plan to compensate for this loss and strengthen their training, considering that this pandemic may come up in the future as well? Sonali?
Deepti, it's a $1 million question actually, and we all are struggling doing this. I can tell you what we have done at our institution. When it came to this year especially, it was practical block of the students and we didn't know how to train. Neither the university nor the apex bodies gave us guidelines. So we created our own plan. each department wise, we have made what kind of assessment for a particular year students are must to be learned in that year. What are the priority nursing procedures we have identified. We have identified certain number of diagnostic tests that are crucial to be taught to that group. We've also created, we've identified the health education aspects that the students will have to learn for that particular year, and on drugs, the medications that they administer. And all of these aspects, we've tried to create the videos. Some we are getting them from online good sources, and some we have prepared ourselves in our institution with the help of available students and faculty, and we are using them for training online. When it comes to the your question was about how do you evaluate them. We prepared a set of MCQs on all of these aspects. I've assigned work to all my department teachers, and we are going through it. Actually, it's still in process because there's a lot of work related to this. So we are trying to show a video and then either create a quiz or MCQ quick test, which is time bound that the student answers. These are smaller ways. Apart from this, we have online time bound tests, short answers, short essays type tests also we're giving to our students, which they write and share with their students. We are also asking students whatever procedures they can do at their homes, like they have father, mother, brother, grandmother. So if they could do some assessments which are very simple on them, record a video and send us back that video, and we evaluate that and give them feedback. So we are trying in these ways. I hope I answered to your question. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonali. Dr. Chetan Singha has a question regarding the introduction of 5-year licensure vis-a-vis lifelong licensure. Who and what decision is responsible for such regulatory reforms? In what ways this will affect issues related to nursing and nurses in India?
So body responsible for how long a licensure should be issued to a nurse is obviously the state council, who is an apex body of nursing for that particular state. And on the whole, the decision will have to be actually first made by the INC or in future NNMC, whether how should the licensure process be in country, and then the states would actually carry on with it. As of now, we have changed, all these states have changed the licensure to 5-year tenure, but there is no as I mentioned in my presentation, there is no linkage of relicensure or continuation of licensure with the skill upgradation or knowledge upgradation of nurses. Yeah.
Ms. Tangam Gomez, who has been one of our panelists in the both our webinars, has been very active on the chat. Thank you, ma'am. She also says that the separate directorate of nursing is the very beginning of the change that we aspire. How can we get the government to listen? That's a rhetoric question, yes.
I think ma'am knows it better than me. Can we request Tangam ma'am to kindly switch on her camera, ma'am?
She would need to be unmuted.
Hi, she's there.
Yeah.
So what?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, congratulations for a great summary of all the things that has happened and need to happen. I put this question because this kind of discussions are happening across the country in different forums and different platforms, whether it is north, south, west, east, it doesn't matter. So I'm just thinking that how do we collectively now try to talk to the government so that I think since I am in India from 2001, nothing has changed. I hear only West Bengal from then till now, you know. So I think we have to think of a way where we can come together, different platform, different bodies, and then somehow talk to the government. Now we are pinning our hopes on this bill. And we also were party to giving feedback because I also head the Association of Nurse Executives India. So I'm the president. So we have also given some feedback, but we are anxiously waiting to see finally what comes of it. It is expected to be tabled in the parliament in the next session, and hopefully it should change things. And I'm really, really hoping. I think such deliberations and discussions are very important. I look at Ramaya for the sheer bandwidth of you as a very established educational entity with a very large hospital. So I'm very sure if there is research and other things being done for different topics, the questions that are being asked, I'm sure that it will carry a lot of weightage, and maybe different associations should collaborate so that when we create a paper, it becomes more heavier and stronger, and it can be heard up to Delhi required. Yes, that's what I hope. But I think this is all a great beginning. There are many foundation stones to be laid. Otherwise, there will be pockets of excellence. It's not going to be norm for India. That's a very long way away. Thank you for asking me to speak for a few minutes. Thank you. I can speak for a whole day.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank
Just a minute. I think we are past 2 o'clock, but we'll continue the question and answers. I just want to mark it. So if somebody has other appointments, please feel free. But we'll have the recording, and we'll be glad to share the recording with you if you're interested. So, but we'll continue with the question and answers. I think there are quite a few more questions and people are asking. So yes.
We have a question from Dr. Nayanjeet Chaudhary. Given that pre-COVID itself, shortages of doctors and nurses were to the tune of 33% and 45%, which is accentuated by the 2 waves of the pandemic, is there potential for renewed demand for independent nurse practitioners in India post-COVID?
There is a very high demand for independent nurse practitioners in India post-COVID for sure, because in my personal opinion, I feel that there are no doctors available with good qualifications who would like to work in rural India and care for people there. So a nurse practitioner in public health would do a great help if we enable her with the knowledge to assess and prescribe medications and follow up the patients with minor elements. Second thing, the maternity care, which is a very big aspect of RMNCH care in our country. There are still places, large number of places in rural India where trained DIs are still conducting deliveries. So if we had trained nurse practitioners as midwives, which cadre is actually not trained at all, we have a combined course for nursing and midwifery in our country, unlike other European countries where there's a separate course for nursing and separate course for midwifery. So midwifery training is a very essential training, and we can actually train nurses as midwifery practitioners, which will do a great good to country. I think government also has recognized it in 2018 midwifery related document that was released from Government of India. This is the address. They want to propagate nurse midwives. A first midwife-led clinic has been started in Gujarat. I think I shared that document with Dr. Nayanjeet a few days ago. So I hope I answered your question, Dr. Nayanjeet. Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Sonali. Yeah, I was expecting something.
We come to the end of the questions. Apart from a point from Ms. Tangam Gomez saying if there is I think she's answering, there is a nurse practitioner course. Is it there for critical care nursing as well?
Yes, this was started just 2 years ago. So first batch is yet to get pass out actually. Yes.
I think there are no more chat questions, but there are quite a few people still left, and
yes,
I'm glad that they are sticking on after the time. But if you have any questions, please voice it, or I guess electronically you will raise your hand and should be able to see it, and then please do that. I don't see any hands raised by the participants. So that will, should we wrap up? Anupama, I think. Hello?
Yes.
Sonali, Anupama, should
Yes.
we wrap up?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for patient listening. It is to have stayed till the end and have had a discussion on the topic. And we are very, very grateful for your participation. And as always, what we do is, in the past, when we had webinars, we have carried it forward to papers and made those papers available. The papers that have been cited at the end, if you go to the RPPC this thing or Anupama's site, the links are available. And we also have one publication that has been accepted and one more publication that hopefully is coming up. Got very positive. We try to keep it in the public domain also. So I appreciate your interest, enthusiasm, and from RPPC, I think Sonali mentioned, and also Ms. Tangam Gomez mentioned about research. We invite collaborators for research on these topics, and we would love to continue research because we feel that getting this knowledge out in publications in the public domain is an important part of advancing the agenda. So we should try to do that, and please feel free to contact us, and we would love to collaborate with you on these things. So thank you all very much for participating in this. We look forward to further collaboration. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coordinating, sir. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Best wishes, best wishes always.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Naina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.